Within the autistic community, you might notice the deliberate capitalization of autistic when referring to individuals. This choice signifies an acknowledgement of autism as an integral part of personal identity and shared experiences. When discussing language preferences, many self-advocates and allies within the community lean towards identity-first language. This includes terms like autistic person or autistic individual, and this preference differs from person-first language such as people with autism. Person-first language, while well-intentioned, can sometimes create a perceived separation between the person and their autism. It might imply that autism is detached from the individual rather than an integral part of their identity. By embracing identity-first language, autistic individuals emphasize the acknowledgement of autism as a fundamental aspect of who they are. Understanding these nuances in language use is essential for creating an inclusive environment and respecting the preferences of the autistic community. A4A is a collective of self-advocates comprising adults who self-identify as autistic. They actively participate in community education, organize events, and engage in advocacy initiatives. Their focus revolves around reforming Canadian autism policy, ensuring that policies are shaped by the direct voices and experiences of autistic individuals. Unlike advocacy led by parents or service providers, A4A emphasizes the principle that autistic individuals should drive discussions concerning their needs and rights. This stands in contrast to some groups where parents or caregivers advocate on behalf of autistic individuals, which may not fully represent the perspectives and desires of the autistic community. Organizations like Autism Speaks, which are not led by autistic individuals, are seen as oppressive within the autistic community. Autism Speaks allocates resources toward eugenic projects that involve using extracted DNA from thousands of autistic children without their consent. These projects aim to identify so-called autism genes in efforts that may seek to prevent the birth of autistic individuals. This raises significant ethical dilemmas and worries within the community about the potential misuse of genetic information and the implication of such research. Autism Speaks promotes applied behavior analysis, or ABA, a therapy criticized for isolating disabled children and attempting to erase autistic traits. ABA's historical ties to abusive methods, coercive techniques, and its focus on conformity are opposed by many autistic individuals and the organization. They experience ABA as oppressive due to its disregard for individual differences and tendency to isolate autistic children from their peers. These initiatives prioritize non-autistic perspectives, perpetuating stigma and disregarding the genuine needs and voices of the autistic community. This highlights the crucial importance of supporting organizations led by and for autistic individuals so that policies and practices align with the autonomy, inclusion, and well-being of the autistic community.
On the table presented, the left column shows how autistic self-advocacy functions as a method of empowerment, while the right column shows the effect of parent or caregiver-led advocacy, primarily being attributable to efforts to fix or normalize autistic children independence. When considering the perspectives and voices of the autistic community, the idea of self-determination is crucial to owning one's identity and finding a place in the larger world. Parents and caregivers can often look for connection with others in order to find solutions to problems. As a goal, autistic-led initiatives seek to be accepted and accommodated properly, while parents and caregivers will search for ways to stop autistic behavior. When concerning representation and decision-making, autistic advocacy groups are the best suited to determining what policies work for them and which do not, while parent-led groups will purport to understand what is necessary without consulting autistic individuals. In the approach to interventions and the overall impact on the autistic community, self-advocates seek acceptance, autonomy, and self-determination, while parents groups seek to bring their children closer to a neurotypical normal and speak as experts because of their experience with the community.
What need is met? A4A meets the needs of the autistic community by acting as a hub of support through communication for those who are diagnosed or self-identified as autistic in Ontario. Through self-advocacy, they work to address the larger population on issues surrounding the inequitable treatment of those who are autistic, speaking to issues like autism portrayal in the media coverage and the banning of seclusion rooms in Canadian schools, among others. Issues like classroom inclusion, awareness versus acceptance, critiquing the way non-autistic individuals discuss and understand autism, etc., are points of focus for the A4A community to self-advocate towards feasible and equitable changes and solutions. This slide addresses provided sites of community and advocacy. A4A works in conjunction with other self-advocacy autistic-led groups such as Autistic Self-Advocacy Network or ASAN. Resources for education on autism are the Ed Wiley Autism Acceptance Lending Library, books by authors like The Autistic Woman and Non-Binary Network, AWN, which focuses on autistic women, girls, and non-binary people as an essential resource for autistic people for dispelling stereotypes and information around autism. A4A is also associated with the Autistic People of Color Fund, an organization, and AustiQueer.
A4A was established in 2017 in Ontario to address gaps in the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, or AODA. Its goal to advocate for the direct recognition of autism within the AODA and push for the rights of autistic individuals in Ontario. Prior legislation did not recognize autism as a disability. A4A made significant strides in 2019 by advocating for neurodiversity and autism spectrum rights. Through collaboration with parents and policymakers, they worked to regulate restraints in schools and provided advice on the Ontario Autism Plan. This was a pivotal moment for autistic-led advocacy groups in shaping provincial policy. A4A expanded its efforts into education and promoted evidence-based practices for autism. Another wonderful aspect of A4A's impactful efforts throughout 2020 includes the representation of autistic individuals in policy decisions, marking them as crucial matters that A4A advocates for as a primary and essential cause. Additionally, their creation of a personalized guide to aid those with autism during the pandemic has been potentially life-saving, as A4A offers vital resources and emotional assistance. A4A worked with Autistics United Canada for disability policy advocacy and partnered with CILT for vaccine access in 2022.
Service providers must first unpack any biases they may have about autistic individuals. Facebook groups like Autistic Allies focus on education, information, and acceptance, with a focus on introducing people to the neurodiversity movement, and can be accessed by approval only. Like A4A, this group is against any form of ABA. Service providers can contact the collective directly for information on writing advocacy letters and information on how to work with A4A to align themselves with this social movement. Service providers can also check out A4A's blog, where announcements about events and information about initiatives and spaces for advocacy and allyship are posted. Zoom meetings can also be scheduled with A4A if service providers are seeking additional information. A4A can only be contacted via email, so all requests should be sent to a4aontario@gmail.com. A4A has a list of resources available that service providers can share with their service users. Through these resources, service users can connect with other autistic individuals to share resources, provide support, and self-advocate. Some of these include information about autism for families and newly diagnosed people, information on advocacy organizations for AAC, which stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication and refers to temporary or permanent communication aids. There are self-advocacy groups, LGBT+ resources, ebooks, books, podcasts, and documentaries, and support and discussion groups for allies. A4A hosts their own Facebook group for autistic individuals and is accessible by approval only. They are also an affiliate of the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, or ASAN, which is a nonprofit organization run by and for autistic individuals. Affiliate groups share the same values as ASAN and must be run by people who identify as self-advocates with developmental disabilities. For example, autistic people or people with intellectual disabilities. They must be inclusive of the entire autistic and disabled community, be currently active, and be willing to update ASAN periodically on their activities.